Actually, funny on that, the prevailing theory, honestly, is because there are scholars who believe that the concept of the covenant of circumcision was retconned from after the Babylonian exile. The Jews, they think the Jewish people kind of devised it as a way to.
Someone
be
said
able
that
to
freaking
definitively.
Panera's Pepsi's
Oh
taste
wow!
funny.
Why can they hear me talk? Hang on.
Better.
No, I mean,
What?
Fair enough. Sorry, I was distracted.
Well, no. Funnily enough, wow, they heard the people, because we're live now, but the people heard my little diatribe, so I'll just go ahead and repeat it so that it's not out of context. There's because I'm not talking about the Jews. Like, I mean, I am, but not like that. No, there's a scholarly idea that the idea of the covenant of circumcision being part of the covenant came about after the Babylonian exile, when the Jewish people were living in like Greek society, as it were. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is after they came back. I'm sorry. This is after the exile, and they returned to Israel, Judah, and what we would consider today like the nation of Israel, that general area, Palestine, where they were basically living among Greeks or Gentiles, but specifically Greek culture, and it was a way for them to distinguish with a glance who was Jewish and who was not. There's no way because the Greeks like to do stuff naked.
Yeah, no, they do. That's the thing they do. Yeah, no,
That's very much a thing they do. So I'll be honest, I don't fall into that camp. I think it came beforehand, but I think it was a way to sort of identify shorthand. I think attributing it specifically to Hellenistic as a what would you call that? As resistance to Hellenistic culture. I think I don't think that's quite accurate, although it certainly served that purpose. Well, welcome everybody to the Average Intelligence Podcast. Did I turn my audio back on? Please tell me I did. Yes. Cool.
See, I said the thing about the sand before we were live, I hope, but that was a joke I stole from Robin Williams, but that's what I had heard. I had heard that it was a health thing. That's what
you would think, because there's also this idea, which I also don't agree with. There was the idea that the prohibition against pork, and I'm not Jewish, so I do not know, but there's an idea that the prohibition against pork had to do with the fact that undercooked pork had parasites, and some people believe that might be why it's codified in Jewish law.
I did see a video about that.
But they wouldn't have known. And the thing of it is, the reason I tend to not, I agree with Ben Shapiro on this, I tend not to ascribe like biological or naturalistic reasons for religious rules, is because if that's the reasoning behind it, then wouldn't everyone have done it? And not just, like if pork parasites were known, then I would think that people would be eating far less pork, or would have shared among the tribes, so to speak, that hey, all you got to do is cook it. Like, these are things that we didn't know then that we know now.
Jake, are you suggesting that people back in history don't have the same knowledge or morality that we do now today? Who would suggest such a thing?
As a radical of an idea as that is, but welcome everybody to the Average Intelligence Podcast. I'm joined by our friend, co-host of the Spur of the Moment podcast, fellow Star Trekker on the Final Frontier, and all-around awesome person, but also a dirty socialist and atheist.
Yeah. Well, that's so funny you say that, because I suspect you asked me to do this because you saw my TikTok video. I don't actually really. Me and Jordan talked about this. I don't really identify as an atheist so much anymore.
What's funny, I actually suspect, because believe it or not, no, that's not why I asked you, but I did see your TikTok video. Hey, so how's it going? And it's funny, that got me thinking. I was like, Justin, you should actually check out Sosa's episode he did with us of Asking Shark in Space. He was a delight, as he always is. And no, I'm not just saying that. I'm not just saying that because he can smash my jaw.
But that's a good reason.
Even though he totally can, but
it's a very legitimate reason.
Not that he would.
No. He seems like a chill dude. He is a chill dude.
Very chill dude. But I suspect you are currently about where I was about 2 years ago, where I started to be like, I'm not sure that I believe anything, but I don't really like the atheist label per se. I've got more questions than
Sort of.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's
not
sort of.
exactly, not
Yeah.
exactly there.
My relationship to religion is complicated. I
All
could share with you today how complicated if you would like, but
Yeah,
it is
yeah. Well,
complicated.
because I have a feeling we have a common thread there. But I figured because we've prepared some, first of all, not to say there are ground rules here, but because it's not going to be that kind. So if you're looking for Christian owns atheist or atheist owns Christian, it's not. This is not the podcast for you.
Not gonna happen.
Also, keeping in
Too
the
polite for
theme, yeah.
that.
Well, also keeping in the theme that this is the Average Intelligence podcast. Neither one of us is a religious or atheist expert.
Oh, God, no, not even remotely. I learned from the school of YouTube, the University of YouTube. That's where I learned and even then, I'm slowly learning about biblical scholarship,
Oh,
as it
clearly
as it
this is a
were.
topic people like. Because say hi in the comments, everybody. And if anyone has questions or comments, feel free. I am looking at the live chat so I can see as you saw our conversation with Sosa. But I figured we have prepared some questions for one another, but this is going to be much more of a discussion rather than a debate. But it's a debate in the classical sense where it's like, hey, I've got some ideas. I'm going to put them out in public, and
Pretty
people
well.
people are gonna people
I'm not
we're gonna
looking.
discuss.
I was gonna say I'm not looking to convince you of anything.
No, I'm
I,
looking I'm looking mainly to more understand your perspective because I find this fascinating because honestly, when you can have conversations around religion like this, like one of my favorite conversations I ever had was with a Jewish rabbi that I have become
yeah,
friends
yeah,
with. And I'm just
fair
like,
enough.
wow, this is so mind-opening because I there's so much of this I didn't know.
Yeah, fair enough. When it comes to religion, I've learned a lot of lessons over the years. I've learned what not to say and when not to say it. I
Jesus
find
jokes are
there's
a-okay. Just letting you know, Jesus jokes are a-okay
excellent,
by me.
excellent.
Because I like to think that, you know, one of my favorite comedy moments is at the very end of Life of Brian when they're singing "Always Look on the
Yeah,
Bright Side of Life." That
yeah,
I just chef's
I
kiss
love that
comedy.
movie.
My favorite joke is Biggest Dickus, but I think the best joke is that one.
I mean, I don't disagree. I, I've learned there's two versions of talking about Christianity. There's the what I call the dickhole atheist, who is condescending about everything and is like you're
Basically from about ages 16 to 24.
yeah, sort well, or Ricky Gervais. Ricky Gervais.
Well, I don't
There's
know. See, funny thing is,
to me
I
he's
don't
a
think.
dickhole atheist.
Well, not really. He's not a dickhole atheist to individuals. He is to the ideas, but that's just because he finds them patently ridiculous. And I mean, fair enough.
Or if you're familiar with, I don't know if he's still around, the Amazing Atheist.
No, I'm not familiar with him.
No, he's a pre. You're stupid for da da da. I find the idea of believing in this to be utterly ridiculous and Godism, all that sort of stuff. I made the mistake of saying to a girl I kind of liked once that I found God to be immoral, and then she stopped talking to me. So I learned not to be that forthright with my with my religious
Well,
opinions.
okay, but I mean, I guess fair enough. But at the same time, like we're gonna get into this, but I kind of realized over the before we get into that, I figured let us both kind of put forth where we're at in terms of belief versus non-belief and what we think about it and where we're at, so that as we're answering questions, it might cut down on some of the need for explanation.
Yeah, there's nuance. Is what I would say. There's nuance.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go first. I've been through the whole gambit. When I was a lot younger, I was devout, wholly devout. My goal in life was actually I wanted to become a pastor. That was my goal at around ages 11 to 14.
Interesting.
And then it was actually one sermon that changed my entire perspective on everything, and I went hardcore. I mean, I went like religiously regressive where I was like, I don't agree with this, but I believe there's truth here. So I went all the way back to shamanism, like in terms
Wow.
of trying to find the truth. And I eventually came to the conclusion that it's just a lot simpler to believe in nothing. And there are
Interesting.
and there are arguments that are cogent and make sense, but then I became a fairly militant atheist. Like I was a dickhole
Really
atheist at one point. Yeah. Oh, for sure.
interesting.
It's like, oh, if you believe in
Interesting.
God, you're stupid. Like I feel like everyone who's ever been an atheist goes through that phase.
I never have.
Okay, well, good
just
on
to be
you.
just to be but not to be like highly moral, but there's a reason I never have. Like I'm
Sure,
not
fair.
that's not being me up my own ass. But anyway, sorry,
Well, but
continue,
one
sorry.
thing God's Not Dead, the movie, got right was the fact that most atheists, not all, but most atheists become atheists rather than they're like very few people are born atheists, at least in the West.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing that they got the most correct is it's usually tragedy
Yeah, tragedy
that
or some kind of confrontation of faith, which is what happened to me. And mine wasn't a tragedy, but it was a confrontation of faith. And I can dig deeper into that if people want me to, but I'm sure it'll come up organically. So,
yeah, yeah.
and then that continued, and then I became kind of like a soft atheist, where I'm like, hey, listen, like I'm not. I kind of embrace Paul Tillich's philosophy of like, sometimes I think my goal is to bring faith to the faithless and doubt to the faithful.
Interesting.
It's kind of
Interesting.
I took on a very live and let live approach because I was always like, listen, I don't believe
Yeah.
it, but who am I to deny someone their faith? But then I started because I can never let anything go.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more and more and more and more and more, and then I kind of came to the conclusion where it's like, well, listen, I don't so know, like I would really like to believe this, I really would because it sounds awesome, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got to square peg this round hole, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion though, but where better to ask these kinds of questions than actually in the religion, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And I've kind of come to the conclusion that it's very much and this was confirmed. I knew this, but this was confirmed by Rabbi David Grossman, who you can see our full conversation on the Arte podcast it was really good.
I think so.
He reinforced for me the idea that a core tenet of Judaism as a religion is the scholarship and the not necessarily the questioning
Yeah.
the attempt to try to figure things out. That's very much a tenet of religion for them. Very different
Yeah.
from a lot of Christians, although not all Christians. There are a lot of Christians, including the church that I go to, where it's like, hey, questions are not only fine, like it's part of the deal because a lot of this stuff just doesn't make sense
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
surface level.
Yeah.
And it turns out that idea goes way
Yeah.
back,
Interesting.
pre-Christian. So now I'm at a place where I don't even know that I would necessarily call myself a Christian because I don't feel like I deserve that label yet. Because I
Interesting.
feel like I'm still the guy in the back of the room being like, hey, listen, like I believe, but I've got mechanical questions.
Interesting. Interesting. So that's interesting to me. So maybe once I explain my perspective on this, maybe you might come around to how I feel about this because me and Jordan always say just to start off, we don't have a problem with belief. We have a problem with organized religion. Just
See, yeah, we're a lot closer on that than a lot of people would think on a surface level.
because like I all the way back to my origin story. So I come from a pretty classic place. I have a religious grandmother. And I don't know what denomination. My best guess is maybe Protestant. She just kind of believes in God as an idea. And she believes in devotion, all that jazz. But she Jordan's perception of this differs than mine, but she never presented certainly at least the Old Testament as being and I hate if this makes me feel like a dick when real. She never presented it like Moses is a real guy or Noah is a real guy or she presented them like they were stories. They were fairy tales. And religion in my life has always been a choice. We never really talked about it, but hey, if you want it to be other than like my uncle who was an addict found religion and it filled that you know what I mean? Yeah, he became
Hmm.
that kind of guy where he needed to like spread it to everybody else because it made him feel so good. So to me, religion was never really treated. It was treated more of as like a fairy tale concept than it was a real, legitimate, applicable thing. Like when I was in high school, read the Bible, but I read it less like it's a religious text and more like it's a novel.
Yeah,
Like,
not to cut you off, but I will say I think one of the best things I ever did because like I said when I was younger, I was very devout. I read the
yeah,
Bible from a religious perspective. When I was in college and going through my atheistic stuff hardcore,
mhm, mhm, mhm.
I took an entire course on the Old Testament, but from an academic perspective. And
Interesting.
I think you have to do that.
So my that's so yeah so eventually, yeah, we'll get there. But starting off, yeah, the Bibles were stories, and that's how I read them. And like to this day, I still point out like there's plot holes in these stories. Um, but as I got older, um, to simplify it, God became less of a thing that you devote yourself to. And I had an epiphany one day that God kind of became a magic wish dragon. That like whenever I was in a bad way or my life was shit or I was having a bad time, I would wish on the magic wish dragon. And so um I had a shitty stepdad, is really the short version. And there was a point where my mother was about to leave him, and I stood up to the sky at the stars and like prayed my ass off to the magic sky wishing dragon that they would stick together, which, long story short, turned out to be a mistake. But the magic worked and they got together. And for a short period of my life, I believed in God. Very short period of my life because I was like, hey man, this shit works. Um, but then there's my stepdad got shitty as I became an adult, and there was a lot of times of like, hey man, like where I Steve down the street's getting all the love here. Where's the love? My life sucks. I could use some help here, and nothing. And then uh I kind of questioned it. That's where I kind of became agnostic. I was agnostic for quite a while in my life where I was like, I don't know. Maybe there could be a God. Um, and then my uncle died. And that was it. Like, me and God were
Yeah.
done. And then um, this is going to seem like an unrelated story, but I can vividly remember the time I stopped believing in Santa Claus. I can remember the day, the moment, the time. I out logicked Santa Claus, and I went, these are all the logical problems with Santa Claus, and then I went, but I didn't want to ruin it for other kids, so I let other kids who are my age believe that Santa Claus is real, and I've always done that. If there are kids who are listening to this for some reason, Santa Claus is real, but I would never tell a kid Santa Claus is real. I feel of a similar way.
Santa Claus is real. They made a whole series of movies about the guy.
Yep. Very real.
Ah,
But
ah, ah.
I feel, and this is where this is my condescending atheist attitude. I feel much in the same way about religion,
Mhm.
where in the same way I wouldn't tell a kid Santa Claus is real. I wouldn't say to a hardcore Christian God isn't real because that just feels uncool.
Well,
So that,
I think part of it's intent too. Like that's the
yeah.
whole thing.
I just wouldn't. But I hit a point in my life where I started to have a similar experience where I started to out logic God to myself, where I was like, there's just too many things wrong with what's happening here. And as I've gotten older, and quite frankly, since I've been doing the podcast and becoming a bit more worldly, I have started watching uh, academic Bible study videos about religion from an academic and a historical standpoint and its impact on the world. And the more I studied that, the more it just became apparent to me that, well, I don't believe of the God of the Bible because I think the Bible is just a fucked with text. Like I just think it's a too fucked with text for the God they're describing in the Bible to exist. Now, that having been said, I don't I've been through while I don't necessarily believe in the God of the Bible, the God of weather has had my back quite a number of times. Like there's been days where I've been like, man, if you could do me a solid and not rain, and then it didn't. Like the God of, and I've been like, the God of rain loves me, but like the God of the God of money sure doesn't.
The god of
So like that,
automobiles has it out
right,
for you.
right, and so I started to be like, maybe I'm polytheistic. Like I believe
There
in
you go.
multiple
Yeah,
gods.
maybe you've got
Maybe
a
I'm
pantheon.
poly.
Maybe you just got to make right with the god of money.
Right, that's what I'm
I
saying.
mean, hey,
But
maybe you kidnapped one of his priestesses, but you didn't know. Like,
I
oh
didn't
no,
know.
wait, sorry, that was
But
Achilles. My bad. My
but
bad.
the thing that kind of prevents me from the thing that keeps me from being an atheist is every time I hear an atheist go, there's nothing after we die, I cringe because I'm like there has to be because the one thing that science can't explain is consciousness.
See,
Science.
That's
Science
fascinating.
cannot explain consciousness. And even science says energy cannot be destroyed, right? Also, so if you're an atheist and you believe in science, energy cannot be destroyed. Energy can only be dispersed. So even if you concede that humans are powered by bioenergy, where does that bioenergy go when we die? There's no explanation for that. Where's that? You can't tell me that innate oneness and what makes you you and me. If it was just basic biochemistry, we'd be just be huskless shells walking around. There, what creates consciousness? There has to be somewhere that consciousness goes when we die. There just has to be. There
That
just
is
has to be.
that is absolutely fascinating.
It's the most
That's where
logical thing.
right, but I know, but that's fascinating that that's where the buck stops for you. That's fascinating.
Because everything else is when you break it down. I mean, I said this when we did Jesus Christ Superstar, where I was like, there's so many logical explanations for stories in the Bible where you're like, okay, yeah, I believe that there was a worldwide flood where a guy brought onto every animal onto a big boat? No. Do I believe there was a sizable local flood where a bunch of people died and they couldn't wrestle or understand the concept of mass casualty? Do
Or
I believe that happened?
or
Yes, I do.
and this is where I tend to lead it, particularly with the Old Testament, but not exclusively. Or maybe because you're talking about an ancient culture, many of whom were not literate, right? Some were. But
Right?
okay, so we need to get the people to understand that we have a covenant with God. And what's an event that almost everyone in that region could identify with? Because flood myths are not
They're
rare
not
in the
uncommon
ancient
for
world.
that part of the world. Exactly,
Exactly.
exactly.
So people being read that story by their priests, because at the time it was the Jewish people,
Yeah,
the Hebrew priests were the ones that were reading and writing the stories and all that jazz.
yeah.
They say, and then there was a great flood, and the people were like, "Shit, there was."
You also gotta keep in mind, and I think who was it? Either it was one of the dumb woman senators who said this, but you gotta also remember that the specific part of that world that wrote the Bible or certainly curated it weren't a globalized society. So
No.
when they say the world, they mean like their immediate
Well,
area.
yeah, and that's another thing. So just a couple. The cat down the road said the fact that science cannot explain consciousness makes me lean towards theism. And then Charles, I don't know. I'm not sure if you're going for sarcasm here, but I would. Your energy is special. F all the other animals.
All right then. My
I'm not.
energy is special.
It is, and it has a very distinct flavor too. So, do you want to answer a question or pose a question first?
I mean, you already answered my first one, which is what is your religious background? I did have a question as you were telling me your religious background, which is, do you feel you had a choice in your religion?
In the very broad sense, yes. Like, well, I mean, I lived it because, like I said, I was raised in that faith, but I rejected it before I was out of my house. And it was like,
Okay,
did my mother like it? No, but she understood that, and I've come to adopt this even more than her. If faith isn't a conscious choice, then it's not that it means nothing, but it means less. Like true faith is a
interesting,
conscious decision. I'm trying to get everybody's comment. Okay, I thought it was sarcasm, Charles.
interesting.
Then we got, I have a covenant with reality, not a God thing. Hey, fair enough.
Fair enough.
And then Jeebus Creepers. I don't know. I think you're trying to say, I don't know what X equals, therefore God or this story. I'm not grammatically sure what you're going for there.
But yeah, that's why I wouldn't identify myself as, but also like I don't identify as agnostic either, because in my understanding of agnosticism is that the question is, do you believe in God or not? I don't know. I don't believe the Christian God exists, so therefore I don't
I mean,
question whether or not God exists.
if you're going just straight from the words, I don't. I mean, the term often refers to the Christian God, but I mean, the word agnostic just simply means no no knowledge.
Interesting, because I know atheist is just no religion. It's not you're not Christian. It's you don't believe in any religions, which
But
I guess by that
atheist is without theist, so
I
without God.
interesting because it was Ricky Gervais. Ironically, it was Ricky Gervais who he kind of made me go, maybe I am an atheist because he was like, if God came down to a little disco boogie and say, "Hey, I'm real," I would very much believe in him, but he hasn't done that yet, so I don't.
Well, that's
And I was like,
it's strange that you said that because my first question to you was, what would you do if a real bona fide miracle performing Jesus Christ walked up to you tomorrow?
I don't know. Um,
Other
I
than
guess I
have a
believe
ton of questions.
I'd have a ton of I'd have questions. It's me. I'd have questions. I don't know why I'm thinking about this. I'd immediately have questions. Um, hey man, why don't you use your superpowers for good? What are you doing showing off for me? Get out there.
Get out there
I
and
don't
get out.
know.
Well, it's funny. It's
How can
funny.
we monetize? I don't know.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because you say that, but I don't know. I don't mean this in a condescending way. Have you read the New Testament?
Not all of it
Yeah.
because and it was years ago and it was a children's Bible. So I don't
Ah,
think it
okay,
had
okay.
I
Well,
don't think it had revelations in it.
because funnily enough, that answer is, I mean, that question is kind of sort of answered in the New Testament because the bulk of Jesus's adult life, other than the thing,
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
basically him going around telling people, "You guys are focused on the wrong stuff. You're too
Pretty well,
focused.
yeah.
You're too focused on the worldly." I'm very much paraphrasing here. He's very much like yeah, alleviating suffering is important and all, but like what really matters is the after. It's
Yeah.
the after stuff. The eternal matters far more because
That
yes,
the
you're
rich guy
suffering.
isn't better than you. I feel like he also said that a
Well,
lot.
there's that, but the bulk of, I even think that's opinion. I even think that's a slight misinterpretation that was kind of co-opted by, for lack of a better word, like the social justice types earlier. Not so much today because they lean heavily atheist, but
Yeah.
like the social justice types in like the 40s, 50s, 60s, and slightly more. They became less judgy about individual sin and more judgy about collective sin. Where
Yeah.
like, hey, you rich people really should donate more to the poor, and yes, they should. But my opinion is, I think Jesus would look at that and be like, yeah, but I mean, this is all temporary anyway.
I mean, Jesus would be like, cell phone.
Jesus would be like, this would make my ministry very, very easy to. No, I just.
Yeah, right, right. I could spread the word a lot. I feel like Jesus would also have a podcast.
I see. I don't. I very much don't. But
You
although
don't
I,
think he would
I
be like South Park and have a local cable access show?
no, honestly, I think if he came back, even knowing all the technology, I still think he'd be in like on foot hitchhiking kind of guy.
Fair enough. No, that's fair enough. I do as well. Yeah.
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 But I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out. Have you seen Hamlet too?
Not in a
Oh,
while.
dude.
Yes, I have seen it, but it's been a while. It's been a minute.
All right, see you later, Jesus. You got my cell.
Oh, that's so funny. It's so funny that you reminded me of that because I have a list of spur of the moment podcast episodes, and one of the ideas on that list is high school movies, and that would be a great one.
I'm sorry if you're even if you're a hardcore Christian, you don't laugh at the song "Rock Me, Sexy Jesus."
I mean, it's
You
rock
need
me.
to become less tense, my friend, because that song is hilarious.
There is a sect of Christians who look. Okay, I did have several questions about maybe I preamble this next question with you said you're cool with Jesus jokes.
Absolutely.
I said on my podcast, the Spur of the Moment podcast, and you gave me permission. Okay, you gave me permission to be my worst self on the Spur of the Moment because I was a nicer version of myself on Haley's podcast, and then you laughed at all my terrible jokes that she facepalmed at, and then I did the worst ones on the Spur of the Moment. So I said, do you think that Catholics watch The Passion of the Christ and jerk off?
Ha! Some of them. Well,
Right,
but
right.
see, but then they can't, right? Because the
Matt
ones.
Walsh definitely does. He definitely does.
No,
There's no way
see,
he doesn't.
he would never, sir, because that would be a sin.
Oh,
And
that
we
is
all know
true.
that Matt Walsh is without sin. At least he certainly says he is.
I mean,
Is he
he's
Catholic though?
certainly
Because he has
he
tattoos.
is absolutely Catholic. Yeah, yeah, he claims to be Catholic.
I like how you phrase that. He claims to be
He
Catholic.
claims to be Catholic. So I get yeah,
But
I got
does the
several
Catholic Church claim him?
right. I got several comments that were like, no, Christians don't watch The Passion of the Christ and jerk off, and I went, I didn't say Christians. I
Yeah,
said
right.
Catholics. And so that is a question I had. That is a question I had where our good friend Virus Fox said a crass version of this on Toon Talk, and I saw there's this stupid. I'm going to invoke his name here because there's no way this will get back to him. There's this really stupid Christian puppet on TikTok who drives me fucking crazy named Dinks the Puppet. He's a stupid little purple puppet. And he just says all the worst. He's the worst kind of Christian. He says everything with certainty. He uses the Bible as a source, and he like dunks and fact checks people and just says false equivalencies. But there was a video where someone said something. I don't remember what it was, but he said, "Oh, you must be a Catholic," and I went,
Okay.
What's the difference? They believe in the same shit.
But
Don't they both believe that the guy died for the thing and came back to life?
correct. But are you talking about between like Catholics and like the general Christian sense, or because it depends?
The discourse, well, at least as Virus put it, he put it the Christians versus the Catholics, and that's how the discourse plays out on the internet, as if the Catholics are not also Christians. I don't understand.
So the best way I can describe that is all Catholics are Christians, but not all Christians are Catholics.
What does that mean?
So the original Christian church was well, okay, I shouldn't say that. The first governed church body was the Roman Catholic Church. Well, no, even that's not true. Because you have the Eastern Orthodox too. So okay, how do I explain this?
I didn't bother to Google this, but I just kept seeing this discourse, and I'm like,
So the Catholic Church is so there are several Christian denominations. The Catholic Church is one of the oldest, but it's not exclusive. Particularly after the Protestant Reformation, they did, like, the variations just exploded.
right.
There was a time where, at least in Western Europe, Roman Catholicism was considered the only valid form of Christianity. Because you had the schism between the Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholic Church, and
That's what led to the Protestants, right?
no,
No.
those
Okay.
were the. Funnily enough, the branch of Christianity that I go to, the Lutherans,
Yeah.
they didn't exclusively start it, but they pretty much did. Martin Luther had a real problem with the Catholic Church charging money for indulgences, and he was like, because he was a I forget what rank he was. I think he was just a priest, but he was a Catholic priest, and he had some issues with not just what the Catholic Church was doing, but also what they taught. So I always kind of half joke and say that like Lutherans are like almost Catholic adjacent, because we do a lot of the same things, but there are some very, very key differences. For one thing, Lutherans, for example, believe that salvation is through grace alone, whereas the Catholics, as far as I know, having never been one, but known a few, the Catholics, at least in part, rely on good works for
Don't the
salvation.
Catholics though have the, I jokingly call it the get out of hell free prayer? My grandma did
Yeah,
it
you
for
just
me
have
when I
to
was a
you
kid.
you just have to say enough of them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, my grandma. It's a very much a memory I have of my grandma sitting me on the couch. She had a name for it, but I always call it the prayer that gets you out of hell. And she was like, "I have to do this prayer, and you will be forever blessed, and then you will go to heaven when you die." And as an adult, I'm like, I've done some really sketchy things. I just don't know that that's true.
Well, fun. Okay, so actually, I'm going to answer this comment. So, I hate to break it to you, Charles, but Jesus, technically speaking, wasn't a Christian. He was still very much a Jew when he
Oh
died.
yeah, yeah. I saw people on Twitter saying trying to make the case that Jesus wasn't a Jew, and when I
No,
have
he
some I have
absolutely,
some news for you, my friend.
he absolutely was Jewish the
But
whole time.
but the Christians also don't well some Christians anyway really don't seem to like the Jews, and I
Well,
watching so
I mean, there are reasons. A lot of that has to do with after becoming the official religion of Rome, they really wanted to differentiate themselves between, and this is over the course of thousands of years. But like for example, this year I recently found out, technically speaking, Christians are supposed to celebrate Passover if you are of a sect that still believes the Old Testament is part of the whole deal, because it is commanded in the book of Exodus twice to commemorate Passover for all generations. Now it turns out that what it really comes down to is the Roman Catholic Church. They wanted to make sure that Easter was always on a Sunday.
Right, right,
That
right,
that
right,
that
right,
was
right, right.
that was the
Yes,
deal.
yes, yes. Remember this.
And so once you do that, because Passover is determined by the lunar calendar, so
Yeah.
if you want that to line up with Good Friday and then to Easter, so technically speaking, Christians do celebrate Passover, but in the sense of the fact that the Last Supper was more than likely a Passover Seder. It coincides with the timeline. And that's
That
why
makes sense.
Jesus was in Jerusalem anyway. They came for Passover, as
That
were
makes sense.
King Herod was there for Passover when normally he was in a totally different country. He was in
Yeah.
Galilee, which is now northern Israel, and Judea. Sorry, Judea was a Roman province, and then Samaria was in between there. So that's why Herod was in Jerusalem to begin with.
Oh. See, I always thought Christians didn't like. Well, there was twofold. And this comes from the one movie, but not because I've seen. But I always thought was for two reasons. One, the fact that they don't accept that Jesus is the Savior, and two, that they killed Jesus.
Yeah.
That
Well,
was my,
I mean,
and I got that from
yeah.
Cartman from Passion of the Christ.
I mean, yeah, but and this is so it's funny because one of the square pegs that I've been trying to round hole in this whole thing is trying to make sense of, because basically what, at least in my view, basically what was happening is Jesus was a Jew and his ministry was trying to basically correct from that perspective to correct what basically had become of Judaism as a religion had just fallen away from the path, so to speak. Now, obviously, the Jewish people are going to disagree with me. Religious Jews will disagree with me.
Yeah.
But again, if you're coming at this from the Christian perspective, Jesus was a Jew who was trying to reform it, but knowing full well his end goal was to be the sacrificial lamb. Blah blah blah. Blah. I'm paraphrasing and not trying to be
Yeah.
dismissive, but we could be here for hours if we go through the whole detail.
Yeah. It's interesting because um I when I watched the movie Jesus Christ Superstar, um,
Probably
I
not the
started
best
to
source, but hey.
no, but reading about it because I was like, wow, this movie sure paints Jesus like a dick. Um, I was reading about the movie, which sent me down the historical Jesus rabbit hole because up until that point, I just like many people who are atheistically inclined assume that Jesus wasn't real for like my
Yeah.
whole life. I assumed he was like up there with like I don't know if the Buddha is real, if it was a real person or not, but like
Well, we're
one
actually
of
we're
those
actually
like
pretty we're actually pretty sure the Buddha was a real person too.
what was the Buddha the real
Oh
person?
yeah. Well, we know
I think
we
like
know we know
Zeus.
his name. Like we know what he was
Oh,
before
fair
he.
enough. I guess I thought of him in the way you would think of like Zeus in that way, where I was like, yeah, he's a made up guy. And that sent me down the rabbit hole of the historical Jesus to where I came to the conclusion that I'm pretty sure Jesus was probably a real guy. Like, do I think that the wizard version of him that a lot of people believe in is real? No, I don't think he was necessarily a wizard. I had that epiphany one day. I'm like, Christians believe in magic. They don't want to say it, but they do.
I wouldn't go that far.
No, that's me being reductive.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Okay. I'm
totally,
just making sure.
I'm mostly joshing, but do I believe in the condescending version, the Magic Man version? Not necessarily. Do I believe that there was a priest or a preacher, a Jewish Hebrew preacher in the Middle East that was a post-apocalyptic preacher and was like, you need to get right before your maker, and here's all the ways how. They thought because a lot of those guys thought the world was going to end. Because I think there's a bunch of verses to my understanding of him saying the world's going to end soon and you need to get right. I'm paraphrasing, but you need to get right with the man upstairs before it does. And that to me does, I believe that. I totally believe. And
Well,
I'm
yeah,
like,
and apocalyptic literature was not new at the time. It had been
no.
going. I mean, the last few books of the Old Testament are apocalyptic books.
There's also theories I've heard, read, that a lot of people believe that Jesus was druidic. Like he had some
Hmm.
druidic ideas. And do maybe perhaps in the if you've never seen um you should watch it, but if you've never seen oh fuck what's the name of it? The Martin Scorsese Jesus film.
Oh, the
The Last
Last
Temptation
Temptation
of
of Christ. I
Christ.
know. I want to. I want to.
You absolutely should. You absolutely should. I'd be fascinated to know what you think of it. Um But in that movie, when he heals someone, you see him rubbing something on his hand and then rubbing it in their face. Like when he heals the blind, he rubs something on his hand and on the person's face, and you're like, well, then that makes you go, oh yeah, well to them, what blindness is different than what blindness is to us, and healing the blind. Maybe the guy had blurry vision or whatever, and that story got embellished to make a point about him healing the sick.
Well,
Like
no,
maybe that happened.
that's actually taken from the Gospels. If we're talking about the same instance, what Jesus does is they walk by a blind man, and Jesus spits into the dirt and makes mud, and then that's what he rubs.
Oh, so maybe again that mud we if I'm applying like what's the reasonable explanation to this? He didn't like miraculously heal a person. Perhaps there was he had
I
some sort
mean,
of medicinal knowledge is my point.
maybe, and here's the thing. This is where I get
Part of
a
the
little
questioning thing.
well, and again, this is where I get a little controversial. I'm much less interested in his ministry in terms of what Christianity is. I'm less concerned with his ministry and more concerned with the sacrifice. Because
Interesting.
I think at the end of the day, that's the big deal.
So here's a question for you because I saw the puppet I mentioned previously. He tried to he said that the crucifixion is not a blood sacrifice. And I would say my in my opinion, isn't it technically the ultimate blood sacrifice to prevent them from
Yes.
blood
Yeah.
sacrificing?
I don't know that I would call it a blood sacrifice per se, but the key word there is sacrifice.
Yeah, it's the final one, so you don't ever do it again. One, right?
Well, it's the greatest sacrifice that could be made. No greater sacrifice can be made.
And it,
So yeah, what else can you do? I mean, that's the for the idea is that, and believe me, I'm still parsing this through in my mind, which is why
yeah,
I'm choosing my words carefully. So, for God to sacrifice His own Son, who was incarnate, whether you believe that Jesus was divine, the Messiah, or if he was simply begotten by God, and there are differences there, no greater sacrifice could have been made. So
interesting.
that's the idea. Jesus
Interesting.
is the fulfillment, even from a literature perspective. Jesus is the fulfillment of the Passover lamb, which is why
Yeah,
whether
yeah,
this is
yeah.
whether this is divine or by design literature from a literature perspective, there's a reason that Jesus' death coincides with Passover. It's the
Interesting.
same idea, but Passover is just a pure lamb. That's why they refer to Jesus as the Lamb of God, because he is the
Yeah,
purest lamb. So his sacrifice is the greatest that could ever have been done
yeah, yeah.
to
Interesting.
to repay the greatest debt that has ever or will ever have been.
Yeah, interesting. I feel like I've been dominating the questions. What's your question? You surely you have questions written.
Well, so
I feel like I'm dominating the questions, but I'm so fascinated.
Jesus may not have been a man. He may have been a magician as well, but magic is not real at this point in time. Whatever Jesus was is not very important to me. He does nothing today. I don't know that. I mean, in a literal sense, no, but I mean, there is something to be said, to push back a little bit. There is something to be said about a religion forming around this person that probably does more to feed the hungry and help the like they do a lot of very good things in his name. So I guess it are you talking literally or because I don't want to take what you're saying and be like, no, you're wrong. But when you're saying he literally isn't doing anything, well, yeah, that's a factually true statement. But but I would wager to say not to say what Jesus would say, but I would wager to say he would say something to the effect of it's like, yeah, but I'm not, as I said earlier, like The earth stuff, that's you guys.
I just sort of feel like he would be like, hey man, maybe stop like actively murdering people in my name. I'm not really
Yeah,
cool or
I
down
think he
with
would.
that.
I think he would probably. But I mean, to be fair, I don't know that.
Didn't he
Yeah,
say
I
something
feel.
about turning the other cheek? I feel like he was
Yeah,
a turn the
yeah.
other cheek
I was
guy.
gonna say, yeah, I feel like he would say that. He's like, not in my name.
Yeah, certainly if you're gonna do it, just kind of do it, but like don't say you did it because of me. It makes me uncomfortable that you're doing it because of me. I feel like he'd
Maybe,
be
but
like that.
that may also
A lot
that
of his
may
words
also.
seem to indicate that.
Well, I mean, the whole phrase love your enemy." I mean, that's.
Right? Right?
I mean,
Right?
I don't know how you can really screw that up per se, but
Yeah. I mean, to me, the truest, most unbiased, unfiltered version of Christianity that exists was the ministry of Mr. Rogers.
okay. I'm glad you brought this up because I have to touch on this. Brooklyn. I'm glad you brought this up because okay, he says sacrificing an innocent son to forgive bad people is one of the sickest things I've ever heard. Okay, but here's the important distinction, and this is what I love. Jesus took that on willingly, and that is key. That is why it worked. Because you're right. Because if he just threw the proverbial lamb to slaughter, that sacrifice means nothing. The sacrifice was willingly taken. Jesus willingly. I mean, that's where the phrase "to carry your cross" comes from. Is the fact
Yeah.
that he willingly did this. I mean, he went with them quietly. He knew. He alluded to this several times in the Gospels. He knew this was going to happen. It was all part and parcel. It was a sacrifice that needed to be made. But because Jesus is praying in the garden, and this is what these are the passages that I absolutely love because they point to the fact that again we can debate for all time whether or not Jesus was divine, but there is no debate that he was human because there are
Yeah.
moments where he's literally praying to God to take make this not my cup,
Yeah.
you know. And then even at one point when he's on the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" These are moments of human, not weakness, but moments of humanity where it's like they're indicating that this sacrifice is very real. This is not a because I always say that like could God wave his hand and rid everything of sin? Yes, but then sin has no weight. If it's just a magic wave of the hand,
It's not,
then
see, for me, not
it's
so
not a
much
big deal.
sin that makes me go, it's needless suffering where I go, that's where my questioning comes in, where I'm like, I can't jive with the God who's like, kid born in pain, kid immediately dies in agonizing pain. I just can't jive with a God that would allow
Well,
that. I just can't.
so, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that idea presupposes a determinist universe, and the vast majority of Christians actually don't believe in determinism. There's a very local
Interesting.
subset that do, but the vast majority of Christian, at least Christian philosophy, actually points to, and that's why I bring this back to Jesus because again, because free will is a thing, the sacrifice has to be taken up willingly. Otherwise, it means nothing.
I mean, that's what a lot of those. I watched a lot of movies about the Passion, just a lot of movies, and they all make the case. He has to choose. I think it was the Last Temptation of Christ. He says, "I have to choose it. It's part of it.
Well, and it's funny, Brooklyn.
That's how
Just
I
to,
get my superpowers."
well, I mean, okay. So I have this really, really weird and controversial idea. Okay, so and again, this is more literature, but let's okay. So the idea of someone being semi divine is not rare in the ancient world. I mean, let's go with the
No.
obvious example, Hercules.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Hercules is the son of Zeus with a mortal woman. He is born different, but not he's not a god yet. He has to go through trials to get there.
Yeah.
Now, one of which, and this is very interesting, one of which is he has to journey to the underworld.
Hmm.
And when he comes back and fulfills all the things he has to do, Zeus gifts him his divinity. In some versions of there's because again, whenever you're talking about Greek mythology, you have to understand that like there are probably about 50 different versions of
Hmm.
of the trials of Hercules, and then there's kind of
Yeah.
like this one amalgamated version that everybody kind of sort of knows.
Bible's kind of similar way where there's the Gospels are
Well, well, in
different
but
versions of the same story.
yeah, and the difference is that okay, the Christian church and the Jewish faith before that, they took all these stories and picked out the ones they wanted and codified them. The Greeks never did that, which is why we have such a disparate group of stories. But anyway, so taking this idea that someone being of divine origin, namely, like, okay, so having a divine parentage but incomplete. So if you take the Jesus to Hercules parallel,
I
God
think
is a father.
Osiris in Egypt, I think it's Osiris has a
Yeah,
similar,
yeah,
yeah. It's a
exactly.
common theme. That's why there's a lot of people who are like Jesus isn't real. Certainly not the Jesus of the Bible is not real
Well, like
because
I
he
said,
matches.
we can argue about his divinity, and I still have, because again
I
the
fully believe he was a real guy. Like that's just full
well, I
stop.
mean,
Fully
I
believe
think
that.
archaeologically, and plus there are historical sources that cite him that are not religious.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly,
there are Greek historians that reference him being around. So
exactly. Yeah, whether or not yeah, I could believe some guy saw Jesus do something, and I mean, the Bible to me is a story of the human memory and witness testimony is historically unreliable.
okay, something weird's going on in the comments. I'm just gonna ignore it. But anyway, so I guess what I'm getting at, and it's like, and believe me, I know a huge tenet. These are my thoughts. This has nothing to do with codified Christian doctrine. So, but the idea of me of whether or not Jesus is the Messiah or Jesus is God in flesh. Let's let Jesus remove. Okay. Anyway, um, because the square peg I'm trying to round hole is the idea. So like there's I forget what chapter and verse and what book it is, but basically the Jewish perspective and why they believe Jesus is not the Messiah is because it very clearly states that God is one and indivisible. Well, the
Oh,
Trinity makes that problematic.
yeah.
So I've been trying to figure out a way where it's like, okay, how could Jesus' sacrifice be what it is? Because if Jesus was just a man, the sacrifice is insufficient for the salvation of the entire world. So how do I thread that needle? And I'm trying to figure it out. And one of the ways is if Jesus is not inherently God in flesh, but is begotten of God. Now, again, the Jewish perspective still has a problem with that, but I suppose it's less problematic. I don't know if that problem is subject to gradation from their perspective, but
Interesting.
yeah. So
It's
that this is, and again, I fully understand the lunacy of trying to logic religion.
right. I
I
mean,
totally understand that.
yeah, yeah. I became interested in religion as an idea and a concept more than anything. Where I was like, I kept seeing atheists and people on the internet trying to be like, religion doesn't make any sense. And I went, but it does make sense. It does make sense when you consider that I don't like saying simple people, but there are much more simple people who don't understand the world in the way we do. Like me and Joe were talking about the idea of conspiracy, and like I did it as a joke where I was like, Here's a conspiracy for you. The guy who says, "Oh, I don't know who Jesus is all of a sudden the leader of the church." Man, I don't know. Maybe he just said he saw Jesus and slandered Judas a bunch in the text. And I'm just saying, Judas had a good point. He was like, "Hey, Jesus, you know, you're kind of becoming a big thing, claiming to be king of the Jews, and then you're making a bunch of noise, and we're an oppressed people in an occupied land.
Well,
Maybe we should shut up, and maybe we should actually fight back. I don't know. Maybe Peter slammed, but that's me applying my
but
conspiratorial.
one point of order. Jesus didn't say he was king of the Jews. Everybody else said he was king of the
Well,
Jews.
yeah, yeah, no, fair enough, fair
I'm just
enough.
saying. I'm just saying. Well,
No, no, you're not wrong. That's true. That is
but
true.
what's funny is I've always viewed the fact that Peter, and I think this is very, which again you can point to this, and even if you believe it, there's a reason, right? Because Peter, the who would become the founder of the church, appointed by Jesus himself, you will be my rock upon which my church is built, denied him 3 times in public.
But again, if I were a conspiratorial minded person and I were to apply the modern logic of conspiracy to ancient peoples, I would say that perhaps Peter just said that. Maybe
I
he's.
mean to be fair, but if he's trying to make himself look good, I would think he'd leave that part out.
I mean, again, according to the Gospel of Judas, which I know is non-canonical,
Yeah,
but
but
according to the
that's
Gospel of Judas, Judas was super special awesome, and Jesus told him that he had to betray him.
well, and I mean, okay, so and here's the thing, there's something to that because I've never viewed Judas as a villain per se. I view Judas and Peter as embodiments of human failure, which if it kind of if you look at the entire story of the Bible, it is at its core a collection of human failure over the span of thousands of years. And that's the point. Is
That's fair.
we've
That's
always
fair.
been
That's fair.
incapable of getting it. We've had highs and we've had lows, but we've never been capable of getting this right. So ultimately, the ultimate sacrifice has to be made. And I do want to point this out because I believe me, I understand where people are coming from when saying like, a father sacrificing his son, that's disgusting. You have to understand though that from the Christian perspective, Jesus is God just in human flesh. So God is technically sacrificing himself. The son imagery is a very ancient concept because like
Yeah.
it's a not so ancient belief that like okay, like even going back to the Viking Age, which is way out almost 1,000 years after the crucifixion, right? They
Yeah.
believed up to certainly up into the Middle Ages that like okay, a brother and sister had the same blood, which we now know is preposterous, but it was the same blood that ran through their veins. So if you needed, for example, if you needed a blood sacrifice from one person but they were gone or dead, a
Yeah.
sibling, a sibling or a son would do just fine because it was the
Yeah.
same blood. So that idea of a son being of this, it's a very old, and maybe it's an old interpretation. I shouldn't say it is. It may be an old interpretation. But now we're getting into the nitty gritty that Christians have been arguing about since Jesus was still alive. So
Right? Yeah, I see. I had all my questions were about Christians, modern Christians. um, here's a real question for you, Jake. Here's a humdinger. Why do Christians get offended so easily?
because I think that see, this is one thing that I really respect about the Jewish community, right? Because arguing and debating their religion is part of it. And I respect the
Yeah,
hell out of that. I really respect that. I think the reason, and not just Christians, a lot of religious people, but yeah, it does is at least in the West, it really does seem to be Christians. They get real bent out of shape because their religion is really tied to their identity, and it's almost like you're
that's
making
true.
fun of them. But
That's
it's
true.
kind of ironic because Jesus was the whole turn the other cheek guy.
Yeah. Why? Yeah, yeah. I mean, not to go back to my, do you think Catholics watch The Passion of the Christ and jerk off question, but I did get a comment that was like, "Yeah, what is wrong with you? You need God," and that was funny because I was like, I guess not everyone can take a Jesus joke. Uh,
I like to think Jesus would like most of them, so long as they're funny.
I mean, they gotta be funny. They gotta be funny.
I mean, that's the rule for
Um,
everything. I like to imagine Jesus hearing a really good Jesus joke and being like,
nice, nice,
"Nice, I
nice.
died for that.
I died. Yeah, I died for that. Um,
I will
what was my
enjoy our
question?
train wreck." You
I
strange
really.
Colonel Sanders looking man.
I mean, it is an excellent train wreck. It's a classic one.
To be fair, we
Uh,
warned you guys from the start what this was.
yeah, no, I was never gonna. I just can't. I can't. I'm not. I'm never gonna be. I tried being that guy once. The guy who's like, y'all are stupid for believing in this bullshit. But like, I don't. I kind of came to grips with the fact that there's nothing wrong with believing in something else. It's it's what you do with it. It's the way that people. I don't like. I had a question of should we keep religion out of politics? I don't like the idea of somebody telling me what to do My mother would tell you that. I'm willful. I don't like people telling me what to do. So I don't like people imposing their idea of what I think what they think the world should be. I really don't like some maniac threatening to end the world on behalf of a god I don't believe in.
Well, and again, I think that's where you kind of have to thread that needle. So I don't think you necessarily need to separate them, not so much from a like religious morality standpoint, but it's because I don't think you can. Because I think that if you are religious, it informs how you live. Just like, if you believe the earth is flat, that
Yeah.
informs how you live your life to a certain extent. But because I very much like the idea of separation of church and state, insofar as the state cannot tell you what to do. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I don't think it's a big deal if, say, the president or someone holding a political office does a prayer before they do something, so long as like you're not like, if you're on the clock, let's move it along.
Yeah,
But
I
like,
don't care if you practice, but so long as you don't make me practice, if
yeah,
you
I mean,
make
that's
me
that's
practice, I will
that's
have an issue with you.
which I know it's slightly different in Canada, but I mean that's the First Amendment, which is often misunderstood. People often misunderstand the First Amendment when it comes to freedom of religion, and all it is that the government cannot mandate a state religion or prohibit you from
Yeah.
practicing your religion, so long as you are not harming
It's
people.
freedom
Yeah.
from religion as much as it is freedom for religion.
Yes, yes. So basically, it's just, hey, the state can't come along and say you will all practice Roman Catholicism or Pentecostal, or you're all going to be Quakers and wear funny shoes and stockings. Like,
So how do you feel when shitheads on Twitter say that this is a Christian nation?
I mean, to a certain extent, they're correct, but not in the way they think. So, like, and again, like this gets into the whole like, were the founding fathers Christians? Many of them were not. Some of them were. But I think when you're looking at the things they believed in, and this is a real nature versus nurture argument too, and I don't
Yeah.
think it's insofar as like this nation was built, which realistically any British colony was
Yeah.
built on this sort of on a morality that in and of itself is independent of religion, but I think in origin not so much. So like a lot of
So
these ideas came from a religious place, but secularism became more and more common. And part of that was the Reformation coming along and questioning the Catholic Church, which that inevitably lent more power to this. I mean, the whole reason that the England became Protestant was because King Henry VIII wanted a divorce and the Pope said no.
yeah, it's true. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but there were a lot of people that were already in that Reformation fervor, so they latched on and said, "Yeah, totally. That's a
Yeah.
thing we should do."
He, he, Not the question for you. Assuming you saw my TikTok about do we challenge religious ideas? Do you? I don't want to be like, do you agree with me? Validate my opinions, but do you think that we challenge religious ideas?
I don't think that's debatable. But here's the other thing. I'll take that a step further. I think it's incumbent upon even those of us that are religious. I think it's incumbent upon, which again, this is something that I really respect about Judaism.
Yeah.
Don't just take it. Like don't just gobble it up and accept it. Question it. It's not a
Yeah.
sin to question.
No. Yeah. That's an interesting perspective. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. You should question. You should point
You
out the inherent
absolutely should.
contradiction.
You shouldn't believe anyone who says
A
anything.
a famous biblical scholar, Dan McClellan,
Hmm.
he is Christian. So, and he's questioning the Bible constantly. It's his entire job. So, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I'm gonna point out an ancient thinker, and again this not all. There are very many subsects of Judaism, so I don't want to, and especially with me not being Jewish, I don't want to try to speak for all of them. But there, it's not rare to believe that, say, particularly the Old Testament, but I'll paraphrase one of my favorite philosophers, Averroes, or as he was known in the Muslim world, Ibn Rashid, ancient Muslim philosopher. Well, not ancient, like slightly pre-Renaissance, so I guess not ancient, but his whole mantra was two truths cannot contradict one another. But he also believed that philosophy and religion, because he was arguing that philosophy and religion do not inherently conflict with one another, but if they do, one of them's true and one of them is not. So his whole deal was, okay, if philosophy and religion both say basically the same thing, then
mhm.
we can pretty much agree that this is correct. if they contradict, that particular part or passage of religion should probably be read allegorically.
Interesting. That's an interesting one. That's so interesting. 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 See, I'm not nearly that well. But other than the most well-read thing I could ask is oh, I don't want to invoke. I used to say he had divorced dad energy. Now he has second husband energy, but third husband energy. Sorry, don't want to get it wrong. Andrew Wilson, where he I watched a really cringy debate with him.
Isn't he a third husband though?
He is absolutely a third husband. That's why I
I was
said
gonna
he's no
say.
longer a divorced. No longer is giving divorced dad energy. Now he's third husband energy.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
gotta give
Thank
him
you.
credit, you know. Um, I
Oh,
watched a
okay.
really
So,
crit.
sorry, I don't want to cut you off, Charles. I do want to clarify. It's there's this idea that Jesus is being sacrificed to avert a punishment that's coming from God. See, I mean, I know some people believe that. I don't believe that. So my perspective on this, I'll paraphrase it because I don't want to cut you off. How I read it, and honestly, I think this is actually theologically sound as far as I understand it, is that because I also don't like the concept of original sin as it's viewed in the Catholic Church. So when Adam and Eve,
Original sin. Sorry, not to cut you off. It being Eve eating the apple, right?
technically Adam, but yes,
Okay, okay.
yeah. Um, what was it saying? So yeah, the first sin is committed, and from that point on, humans have free choice. But by our very nature, we are predisposed to sin. And sin, the word sin actually comes from gosh, what language is it? Is it Hebrew? It's
Latin.
Hebrew or Greek, Latin? I'm not sure. It's but what it basically means, what it translates to, is missing the mark. It's an archery term. And
Ah,
actually,
interesting.
okay, so in Latin, sin, and in Spanish too, sin means without. So sin
Ah,
is the thing from a religious perspective. Sin is the
that you're
thing that,
missing.
well, and removes you from God.
Gotcha.
So it's
Gotcha.
not so much that the sacrifice is saving us from a divine punishment, it's wiping the slate clean because the point is in Genesis when Adam and Eve eat the fruit is they have chosen, they've made a choice to disobey the commandment, and by doing so they are removed from the Garden of Eden because they can no longer be there
Gotcha.
because they have
Gotcha.
tasted. And then it
Gotcha.
goes further with Cain and Abel. The whole story with Cain and Abel is about Cain destroying that which he sees as divine because he is jealous, which is, I mean, again, we're
Oh,
talking
I
about
thought
sin.
about it was about a brother bludgeoning another brother to death.
It is, but the reason why. So Cain bludgeons Abel because God prefers Abel's sacrifices, but it's because Abel gets it and Cain doesn't. So instead of Cain being like, okay, I need to shape up and figure out what I'm doing wrong, he just kills his brother out of envy.
Gotcha. 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 That makes sense. Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of
It's
Cain and
not,
Abel's
that's
characters
what I'm
miss
getting
that.
at is it's not a punishment, it's a state of being, at least from my perspective.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, Not to get philosophical, but yes, Andrew Wilson, cringy debate. He was trying to posit the case that there's no such thing as inherent morality, and all morality comes from Christ and Christianity. And I so just wildly disagree with that. I believe that morality is inherent because it is counterintuitive to not be. Society would be counterintuitive if we all just killed each other. So the morality of not killing each other is inherent because it is key to building a successful society. It would exist with or without religion.
I'd push back on that a little bit. But I, like, for example, we also know that morality evolves over time. I mean, we've seen that. We are much more inclined to respect people's, I guess, what would you call that? Certain aspects of people's, how people choose to live their lives are more respected now than they were even, say, 20 years ago.
That this is true.
I mean, this is a thing, but I would make the case that that's not universal across cultures because you look at, particularly in the ancient world, the idea of killing those guys over there and taking their stuff was not really
That that is,
all that strange.
but yeah, but did that growth? Yeah, there is a but to what I said before, which is when I'm like, where does my? Because that obviously makes you go, where does my morality come from? It doesn't come from the Bible, and it doesn't come
Well,
from
but
Jesus.
that's well, but it might indirectly, and that's the whole which came first, the chicken or
But
the egg thing.
that is
You know,
exactly right. Where I'm like, a lot of my morality came from I referenced him earlier, but good Reverend Mr. Rogers. That's where a lot of my morality and a lot of my life lessons came from, Mr. Rogers. The right and wrong comes from superheroes, and superheroes are based in like Superman. Superman, yeah,
well,
Superman is a Jewish golem.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah,
So
he's a Jewish
here's
golem.
a here's a fun example of that, and actually here's a
Just so everyone knows, Superman is Jewish, by the way. Just so we're all clear, he's
well,
a metaphor for a Jewish
Jewish
immigration story.
inspired, Jewish inspired for sure. I mean, he's Moses. I mean,
Yeah,
this isn't me making the connection. This is what the author said.
I mean they were Jewish. Their authors were Jewish,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah,
they were.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Superman is Moses with more superpowers, different
pretty well.
superpowers.
Different superpowers,
Staff not required.
right? Right.
Which actually, fun fact, is actually Aaron's staff that turns into the stake, not Moses. But they condense it for the Prince of Egypt. Yeah, I get why.
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Narratively, it's better for Moses to do it, but I get the Bible felt differently.
Right? They were like, we took some creative liberties with the story.
I mean, it makes sense. We have to memorize fewer names, but we also end up giving Jeff Goldblum fewer lines. So
Oh, that is a travesty. That is a
Hollywood is a give
travesty.
and take.
Yeah, you got to make some sacrifices.
Oh gosh, where was I going with that whole thing? Complete. I got a question for you.
Yes.
What's something you think religious people misunderstand about atheism?
That
Ancient
it's
Hebrew
a
comic books.
yeah, excellent. That it is a an ideology and a religion because it's not. It's just a lack
Well,
of belief.
I would also push back on that. I think there's a fair amount of atheists that very much treat it from a religious. They don't realize they're being religious, but they're kind of being religious.
I would argue whether or not they do or not in and of itself conceptually is not. It's just what it is. I believe in you. You don't. Who put it? That maybe it was Ricky Gervais. Maybe it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, which is like, you don't believe in Zeus or Osiris. I also don't believe in those guys. I just don't believe in one more god than you. That's so like there is no religious ideology towards atheism. It's just I just don't believe in God. That's how I
in
see it.
that's what the term means, but I think some people, which again, it's not fair to attribute because I would be doing the same thing. I would be attributing a belief system onto a word that actually means to not believe in a belief system. But
It's not a monolith. That is also true.
this is very true. Just like there are groups of Christians that believe in some really, really strange things that I don't think mainstream Christianity would espouse. Looking at you, Westboro Baptist Church, but
What are you? What? I would never have guessed you would have brought them up.
they're
I can't believe
problematic.
I thought for sure they were done. Like the
Oh
fact
wait,
that
are
they
they
showed
still
up again
around?
recently, they're still around. They showed up and they were picketing some person's funeral. I thought for sure they were done when the dickhead dad died.
Well, not only that, the older sister left. And like
Yeah, yeah,
she
yeah. Yeah.
this has been some years ago, but she did a bunch of podcasts and was
We can
like,
we can agree he's a dickhead, right?
yes, we
Yeah,
can
okay,
agree
okay, okay.
he
That
was in fact a dickhead who was
yeah, okay.
probably like Kinsey Six gay.
Oh, I'm sure he was. I'm sure he was. Yeah.
I mean, nobody hates gay people that much without.
No. Yeah. Oh man, they were just the worst. The worst. I watched a documentary about them.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the funny thing is that oldest daughter was in that documentary and she looked like a mental patient. Like that
yeah.
creepy smile they did, and then seeing her out of that, I was
Uh,
like, man, I'm so proud of her. That had to be rough though. That had to be so rough for her.
what I learned though is like they're not even the only one of people like that. They're just the most famous.
That's true. Yeah, no, there's definitely, which is it's always my favorite Jesus meme of all time is it's like a very I get like similar to the paintings you see of Jesus, but he's going like this, and he said, "Ugh, guys, I said I hate figs."
I've seen that one. That was good. That was great. Yeah. No, I just I yeah. I that there's a lot of like, as they put it, really intense, how did someone put it? Philip DeFranco called it radical Christians, like your Pete Hegseths who are out there quoting.
Listen here, nerds. Yeah, he's. I saw
Okay.
that.
Oh yeah, when Virus was talking about them, he was talking about Pete Hegseth, and Pete Hegseth quoted almost verbatim the fake prayer from Pulp Fiction. Oh my God, Pete, what are you doing? Yeah, I just have to say, I'm smarter than Pete Hegseth.
Well,
I,
and here's
I just feel like objectively, I'm smarter than Pete Hegseth.
I mean, you at least know better. Well, the thing is, he didn't write that speech.
No, ChatGPT definitely did.
Yeah, that's probably true. But here's my deal, and like I will never claim I don't know the Bible. I mean, I know the Bible, but I don't know the Bible. You know what I mean? Like I have
Yeah.
a pretty good idea of what's in there, but can I cite you a verse out? No, I'm. I
I
mean,
mean,
John
another
John
one that's
John
like,
John 3:16 notwithstanding, because everybody knows that. But I'm Coach Austin 3:16. Give me a hell yeah.
oh, hell yeah. I
What?
was, I was gonna, I was gonna say I do know the one that's like, and God said unto ye, go Knicks. That's that's that's
That's a
that's what that.
Simpsons joke, isn't it?
I was pretty sure that's a Family Guy joke.
It might be, yeah. But my whole thing is like I'm actually kind of proud because sometimes people have been like, well, oh yeah, but the Bible says this, and I'm like, I don't think so. And see, the thing is, I don't know that for fact, but it sounds so fishy to me that like I'll put it to you this way: if the Bible does say that, I'm not down with it.
The thing about the Bible itself is the more you learn about it, the more you learn that it's a stitched together Frankenstein of a book of like things that have been edited and chalked out and translated and retranslated and cobbled together, and this verse doesn't really mean this because in Hebrew it means this, and so it's like I just don't from
Well, and I
my from
mean,
my perspective I consider it a trustworthy document.
yeah, and well, not to mention you're talking about languages that don't use punctuation the same way. Like, if you don't punctuate, and this is a cultural thing, it's not even a linguistic thing. So, like, if you speak Spanish, the difference between porque why and porque because is a space.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
if you
yeah,
but
yeah,
if you
yeah.
don't but if you don't know that and you're translating, you might get the wrong idea. And instead of it being a question, it becomes a statement.
Yeah, yeah. The Japanese is like context sensitive. Depends on who you're talking to and when you're talking to. Yeah, language is different. And there's a lot of cases of that in the Bible where people are mistranslating the Hebrew, or the Hebrew word has a different intonation or a different, and like the when I started to learn about the Bible and Christianity in its place in its historical context, and it blew my mind where it was like, yeah, you ever notice how in the Old Testament the God of the Old Testament sure seems like he's two different guys. At one point he's like love everybody, and then the next point he's like smite everyone with a rain of thunder, and he's either angry or mad depending or loving depending on the story. It sure seems like he's two separate gods. That's because he probably was.
Well, no, actually there are two different traditions, the Yahwist and the Elohist traditions. So basically if you're reading the Old Testament and God's kind of described more as like a not even a man in the sky, a sort of like non-corporeal being. That's the Elohist tradition, and the very personification, literal man in the sky, dealing. So biggest difference is Genesis 1 was written by the Elohists. Genesis 2, which features God walking around the garden, that's the Yahwists.
Oh,
So
see,
no, they're actually that if you get into which again that doesn't mean that it's false in the sense that like it's the stories are written from two different perspectives.
I watched this really good biblical history video about how about Yahweh, the history of Yahweh, and how he went from being a kind of a nothing storm god to being the God, the one that we all talk about. And the idea that the Hebrew at the time of the Old Testament would have had like a similar pantheon of gods to that of like the Greek or the Roman or the Egyptian pantheon, and Yahweh wasn't originally part of that pantheon, but got added to it later, somehow got added to it later, and it looks like no one really truly knows where Yahweh comes from geographically. But there's a belief that he may have come from the Babylonian. He might be a Babylonian pantheon god, and he got latched on to the Hebrew pantheon. And Eloi was basically, and I'm being really really simple when I say this, but the best Eloi was basically the Hebrew pantheon's equivalent to Zeus. If we're
Yeah,
talking like pantheon
Elohim.
gods.
You're thinking of
Yeah.
Elohim.
So Elohim, sorry, yeah. But he was basically the Hebrews' version of Zeus, and the concept and the idea of God being a big, like big white bearded guy. They're thinking of Elohim. Did I get any of that right?
That's typically more Yahweh as the, but again, they mix, right?
Yeah,
You're talking about very old stories that by the time they were written down were probably already thousands of years old, and they had to all, just like we did with the Christian Bible and the Council of Nicaea, we had to sit down and argue about what was canon and what wasn't.
yeah.
So but I have one for you. And one plus, like, let's not forget the fact that, like, we're currently debating atheism versus religious. Then if you decide you're religious, then you have to argue about which religion you believe.
Before you ask your question, I meant to say this earlier. This debate is not going to be a Dean Parker debate.
No. Yeah. Listen, are you backed into a corner right now?
No, not I don't even feel remotely backed into a corner. I have to before you ask, I have to mention one of the most embarrassing theme parkers. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it to you, Jake. You need to check out him debating Nick Fuentes. It
Oh, that
it
sounds
makes
delightful.
it makes Nick Fuentes look good. It's
I
incredible.
believe it or not, see, believe it or not, I can actually believe that because if nothing else, Nick's used to being yelled at, so he can kind of keep his cool and just
It's
keep that big
incredible.
doofy grin
Also,
the
it's
whole
so funny.
time.
You nail it. You nail it every single time. But it's Dean Parker doing that thing he does where he talks like at 1,000 words per minute
Yeah.
and won't let anyone speak. And Nick is just sitting there calling him by for Nick Fuentes is just sitting there with his head behind his back, basically just letting him talk and letting him talk. And just out of nowhere, Nick is like saying these weird, or not Nick, Dean is saying all these weird false equivalencies that are like, whoa, where did you come to that conclusion? Like it's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It makes Nick Fuentes look like
Speaking
he's
of,
reasonable.
and like I'm not dogging on you guys, but like our comment section is going wild. It's like
That's
I can't even I'm not ignoring you guys. I just literally can't keep up with it. So
excellent.
you guys do you have your fun because they're having like a very spirited debate on what constitutes. I didn't mean for this to start this way. Like what even is atheism and like is dogma equal religious? Like it's fascinating.
Yeah, that is a fascinating question because me and Jordan always say, I mean, I said this earlier, but it bears repeating. I don't see anything wrong with faith. It's religion I have an issue with. Like, there's nothing wrong with believing in a God so long as you don't use that God to hurt as an excuse to hurt other people.
Well,
That's where I take
well, and
issue.
yeah, like there's actually we both have a mutual affinity for the show The Orville, which if you, especially if you like Star Trek and you haven't seen it yet, you really should watch it because it was doing Star Trek better than Star Trek at
It
the time.
was. It kind of probably still is.
Well, if it comes back, I'm not sure. I haven't seen Starfleet Academy yet, but and I've totally
Fair.
realized I haven't done any of the sponsors yet, so fuck it, I guess we won't have sponsors tonight. They're in the description. So
Click in
screw
the
it.
description for the sponsors.
I'll remove them. But yeah, I clearly this is just content. But they have I think it's the last episode season one actually, Mad Idolatry, the one where they encounter a planet that phases between universes and the time difference, so that when it phases back into quote unquote our universe, like what is it, 1,000 years pass or something like that.
Uh, Either that or 100. It's one of the ones, but that
It's
sounds right.
more than 100. But anyway, so they come down there where they're basically still in like not the Stone Age, like I'd say the really, really early Middle Ages.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Early, yeah, early.
Very
Basically,
probably Bronze Age. Bronze Age is probably more
yeah,
accurate.
yeah.
And a girl cuts her hand, and Kelly, a character on the show, uses her medical, advanced 25th century medical thing to heal her hand. And then when it phases back in, there's a whole religion that's developed around the goddess Kelly, and how
Yeah.
you tell if you're faithful or not is they cut your hand, and if Kelly heals your hand, then you are a believer, and if not, then you are promptly executed.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
Well, that,
fascinating look at how this could have this could have theoretically happened, assuming that it was somebody from the future.
yeah. Yeah. Assuming, but
It's
I
a
think
very
that
fun episode.
Orville did inform like a perspective I had where I was kind of like, do we still, but Star Trek has kind of proven that religion still exists in a potential Star Trek like future. So, but the notion that we eventually evolve past the need for religion and that it is an archaic system of ideas that were necessary when we didn't understand the world, but we understand the world now, so they're not really necessary anymore. And it's a thing, if you want to evolve as a society, you need to move past. I kind of share that perspective for a while, where I was like, yeah, it doesn't really service us anymore. It just kind of seems to just cause conflict and
Well, I mean, I think on a macro level, you've got a point. I think on the micro level is where religion could still be important to a lot of people, but again, it's kind of like any tool. It's like you can use it for good or ill,
yeah, if it
and
makes you a good person, I don't want to take that away from you. Like it made my grandma a good person. So like if it
and
makes
I've
you a
I've
good
always
person,
I've always viewed it as kind of a now. I will say, well, do you understand death? I don't. I don't know if that was directed at me. No, I don't understand death.
no,
Um,
I don't.
no, I would never claim to. Um, I've always kind of viewed it as and yes, I understand the problems with Pascal's wager, everybody, because so in the comments say I know the criticism, but I've always kind of viewed it as kind of a bit of a wager. I'm taking Pascal's wager and making it a two-step process. So okay, are you familiar with Pascal's wager?
I recognize the name. Refresh me.
So Blaise Pascal basically makes the point that if your choices are believing in God or not, it makes more logical sense to even if you're just going through the motions, because he claims that by going through the motions you will grow in faith, right? Okay, so if you believe in God and God doesn't exist, you've realistically lost a little bit of time, but it's not really that big of a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And then if you believe in God and God exists, then you get the eternal reward, right? And this is very old Christian thinking. I don't ascribe to that. My view is that Jesus' sacrifice is good for everyone, regardless if they believe or not. But I understand not all Christians take that view.
They do not. They do not. The puppet I mentioned earlier does not believe that.
Well, to me, it doesn't make sense for it not to, because if it's the greatest sacrifice ever made, I mean, you would think it would be for everybody. And plus, there's a lot of people who can't help where they were born and what they were exposed to, and I don't think those
Yeah.
people should be damned just because. And plus, if the message is that all humanity is inherently flawed, then how do you pick and choose? That's the part. That's why I believe it's yeah.
You've just given me a question I want to ask after you ask
Okay,
your
okay.
question.
And then conversely, if you don't believe in God and you're right, well, I mean, I guess the only thing you win is that you're right. So,
Yeah.
yay.
Ooh, yeah.
But then the criticism is like, well, yeah, but that's presupposing a Christian God, and I'm like, I understand that, but then once you arrive at the conclusion that Pascal wants you to arrive at, which is to believe in God, then you have to run the wager against all the religions in the world. And I still think that, again, just on a balance of probabilities, considering what the outcomes are, I still kind of think Christianity is the way to go from a like a Vegas odds standpoint.
I think if you pushed me, I would probably be like, I don't know, the Egyptian idea of the afterlife sounds fairly believable. No, no, that was a joke. I'd be like, I can't help but
Yeah,
not believe that there is potentially an
but which
afterlife.
one though?
Right. Generally, there has to be an afterlife. Which one it is, I cannot tell you. But I just generally believe there probably is one. You had a question, and then I interrupted you with Nick Fuentes.
Well, because humanity is inherently flawed. There's no perfect person. I'm talking about somebody in the comments.
There's
Humanity is inherently flawed.
According to Christianity, there is
Have you?
one perfect person.
Well, yeah, but he technically wasn't a person. I mean, he was, but he was also a god. So, but no, literally, have you ever been around a toddler? They're horrible little bastards.
Oh,
Every single one of them.
I've been having this thing of like people don't want to admit kids can be mean. Like as a quick aside, in Canada they're talking about banning social media for kids under the age of like 16, I think. I can't remember what the
Mhm.
age is, but like for kids. And like on the one hand, I'm like, ooh, no, slippery slope, freedom of speech, censorship, yuck. But on the other hand, I've been bullied by so many kids on the internet that I'm kind of cool with it. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
They're like, hey, listen, I may not agree with it, but it kind of makes sense.
Right? Like, I don't know. I just, kids kind of, I know it's about protecting the kids, but I like to be protected from the kids, please. They're really mean. They're
Well, but
so mean, Jake.
not only that, show me like in totally understanding that I was once 13, right? I was a moron.
I was not a, yeah, I was a moron. That's a nice, safe for work for way to put it.
I mean, complete dumbass.
Yeah, complete
We
dumbass.
used to
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
off my 13-foot roof for fun. Okay, we were not capable of deciding what was good for us.
Oh, this is probably uh TMI, but do you know, when I was 13, have you seen Superbad?
Yes.
You know the bit with Jonah Hill
I,
where
I
he likes to draw,
yeah.
dicks?
Yeah.
That joke is so funny to me because I had a friend like that. Like legit. He loved drawing dicks. Like I'm not even kidding you. He would draw them on everything. So
Hold
that
on,
joke is extra funny to me.
you'll appreciate this. Dicks? Like a man dick?
Yeah, no, like a man dick. Yeah, he would draw it on his notepad, and he
I I,
got
I,
married
I,
to a woman.
I do want to just semantically point out, Brooklyn. I'm not trying to pick on you, but Brooklyn, like, quote, being imperfect is not a flaw. That's definitionally a flaw. And
Yeah,
like I want to be clear here. Being imperfect does not mean bad. It's just
that's,
there is no
yeah,
such thing as a perfect human.
yeah. Everyone has flaws.
Yeah, everyone has flaws.
Mine is that
Like
I'm too perfect. I'm too good.
what did I used to say? I said my greatest attribute is my humility other than my general awesomeness.
Right? Exactly. But no, everyone sees that's because there's this inherent idea of seeing flaws and imperfection as being morally wrong, and it's not.
No, no, that's not what I'm getting at. Now, granted,
Yeah.
there certainly are Christians out there that would
Oh, for
give an
sure.
equivalence, but
But but
but like I said at the beginning, I don't even know that you would necessarily call me a Christian. I'm still trying to figure. I may be a dirty heretic. I
I mean,
probably am.
fair enough.
I'll
I
put
think
it
we're kind
this
of in the
way:
same school of like,
The Spanish Inquisition would have had a field day with me.
oh, I probably would have been crucified. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, they didn't crucify people, but they
Oh, but you had a question that I very handedly derailed.
I don't even remember the question. Oh, but I do have an next one for you. Maybe it'll come up. What's the strongest argument for the existence of God that you've heard?
Well, I think the strongest argument for God for me, I think I already said this, is the idea of consciousness, or as a Christian would refer to it, the soul. Um, whether you call it a soul or whatever you call it, I do think there is an inherent oneness per person. Like I said, if you eliminate personality and consciousness and identity, all that's left is a husk. That identity, that bit that makes you Jake and that bit that makes me Justin, has to come from somewhere and it has to go somewhere. So I think if there is a God, that is definitely an argument for one. That and all the times I went, please, for the love of God, don't rain, and then it didn't.
Okay,
Like
yeah, I have to answer some questions because they are directed. What makes me a heretic? I'm being a smartass, but like realistically, there's a lot of Christian doctrine, particularly in Catholicism, that would have absolutely made me a heretic. Take your pick. I mean, I could list hundreds, but suffice it to say, I don't toe the line when it comes to dogma. How are you guys intelligent? Never claimed to be. Our mascot is a chimp in a suit.
show's called average intelligence, my friend.
Yeah.
Average. In my case,
Uh,
less than average.
and then what would be the criteria for human perfection? I guess my point would be, I how would I know?
The
I'm I'm
closest
I'm a
the
dumb imperfect human. How would I have any idea?
the closest person to objectively the most perfect person in existence was Mr. Rogers. And even his
Pretty
wife
close.
said he detested that characterization. He hated the characterization that he was a saint, but he pretty much was. That's about as close to
See,
human
to me,
perfection as we're gonna get.
that to me is kind of like, okay, so there's a really good, particularly you Christians in the audience, if you're watching this, if you haven't seen it, I highly, highly, highly recommend the movie Silence, because it was a bit of an epiphany for me, from a religious perspective, and really made me think. So very interesting, and I do believe one of the cardinal sins is hubris, in the sense that, like, you think you are better than you are, and but you have the gall to think that you're better than you are.
Interesting. So, were you suggesting that because Mr. Rogers didn't think he was a saint and that he was an imperfect human, that in fact makes him a saint? Is that what
Not
you're getting at?
literally, but more so than he would. Like, there is something to
Symbolically.
be, not even symbolically. So, like, there's a phenomenon that happens with most, because most people, not everyone, most people without some kind of psychological disorder. Jordan Peterson points this out in his book. It's actually rule number 2. Uh, Treat yourself the way you would someone you. Hold on, I need to look up because I don't want to misquote it.
Treat those as though how you would
No,
want to be
no, it's not.
treated.
It's not the golden rule. Hang on, let me. Hold on, I gotta grab a book real quick. Hang on.
It's book report time.
I used to have the list, but then I changed phones. Let's see.
Time for the book report. My favorite segment of the show.
Okay. Let's see. Rule number 2. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you?
I
Give
love
me
how
the
the
table of
bookshelf's still
contents.
there. Now it's not directly in
Yeah, it's
frame
just
though.
turned to the side.
Now when it's time for the book report, he could just handily just pull it off the shelf.
Okay. Treat yourself like someone you were responsible for helping.
Oh, interesting. That does sort of align with the philosophy I've sort of developed in terms of like not saying yes to everything, being that you're the person that you have to wake up with every single day.
See, okay, Garland gets it. Garland totally gets it. So the reason I'm bringing up Jordan Peterson is because that rule points to the fact that a lot of people, I would venture to say most, but I would no way of knowing because I only know what's going on in here. And even if somebody tells me something, I don't know for a fact that's what they're thinking. Most of us think we individually are not worthy of a certain level of care to give ourselves. Which is why the book points out, it's like, if my dog is sick, I will spend money. I will drive to the vet. I will buy that medicine as quickly as I humanly can. But if I'm sick,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm fine. I it can wait.
Interesting. That's
And
yeah,
some and,
that
so,
yeah.
and some people actually have a level of self-loathing that I would say is unhealthy.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Because,
definitely.
and I mean, there's reasons why, because we know every horrible thing we've done, every horrible thought we've ever had. We know it. Nope.
Yeah.
Like, so it makes sense. But the important thing is, like, so Mr. Rogers, of course, would feel that way because we all just see the wonderful human being. And the thing is, because he's not so in love with his own shit, that
Yeah.
he thinks he's like, yeah, I'm no saint. The humility in that points to a better person than he thinks he probably is.
Yeah, I mean, like any one of these people, he's a human. He has moments of being distressed or being unhappy, like
What
any of us do.
what's based on fear? No, 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 no. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about not wanting to go to the doctor because you're scared. I'm talking about taking care of oneself. Because it's
Yeah,
like we will, well, okay, so let's bring up the doctor, right? If someone you love has to take medication, you will make sure they take that medication. But to you, your own medication may be a bit of an afterthought. Maybe you
yeah,
don't like
yeah.
it. Maybe you don't like how it makes you feel. Maybe you don't like the taste. Maybe you can't be bothered to take a pill every day. The point is, you take more care of the people you, generally speaking, you take more care of the people you love than you do of yourself.
I certainly do.
I certainly
That's
do.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah.
It's not
Um,
about going to, because okay, so here's the other thing too. It's like your very good friend or somebody that you love dearly comes to you and says, "Hey, I really need to lose weight. Help me." You'll help them. You'll help them come up with it. Even if you don't know, you'll find information. But
yeah.
dude, like, most people won't do that for themselves.
I can't be bothered to go to the gym.
I'm pretty sure my dog just farted, and it's that's awful. That's disgusting.
Bad timing. Bad
Oh,
timing. Oh, that's rank.
that's disgusting. But anyway, I'm because you've actually answered the rest of the questions I had for you just in the course of the conversation.
Excellent. I just have one more, which is are evangelicals the worst?
I don't know that they're the worst, but they're on the list.
They're on the list. There's a list.
Oh, for sure, there's a list.
What's the list?
Oh, I can't tell you the list because then I'd have to kill you.
Oh, fair. Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Even though that would be a sin.
I mean, say
But
what you
actually,
will about the evangelical
somebody
patient.
somebody asked if a newborn baby was perfect. I wouldn't say perfect, but what I would say is that humans are, by their very nature, inclined towards sin. Now, I also believe that sin is more about intent than the actual deed, because you can totally, quote unquote, commit a sin but not have the intention of doing something bad. So no, I don't think that they're perfect. I guess they might be briefly, but by their very nature, humans are flawed.
I would say
It's only a
that
matter of time before a person does something
I used to
bad.
have a far shittier version of how I would say this, but the nice way I would put it is we have to teach kids how to share and be nice to people. We have to
Yep.
teach it to them. It is not inherent to them to be nice and kind and good and pure. Yes, it does occasionally happen, but you have to teach a
Until
kid,
until they really like that toy, there's only one cookie. Like it
right?
will eventually happen.
Kids are
And that's
predisposed to hit you.
and that doesn't but that doesn't point to evil. I don't like this idea of like pointing out an imperfection means that something is bad. It's by its nature. It's the same way,
Yeah.
like if you don't train a dog to go to the bathroom outside, they will absolutely go indoors.
When we were in Mexico, we encountered a moment where we had to deal with children
Oh boy.
that were very annoying. And how I would say and we were like you never get upset with the child because it is within the child's nature to be annoying. It would be like asking a dog not to bark or a cat not to meow. Children are just inherently it's part of their nature. It's the way they're going to be. You can't be upset at a cow for mooing. You know? Like not that I'm comparing children to cows, but like you know what I mean? Like they're gonna be loud and boisterous and they're gonna be whatever. They're gonna be slightly irritating. I would never blame a child for being the way they are. I blame a parent or adult or parental figure for not teaching the kid to be better. Like, yeah, no
Or
kid
maybe
is.
putting them in that situation that's just unrealistic, because not for
Yeah,
nothing, I don't think you can realistically expect a 3-year-old to go 8 hours straight in a car without doing something kid like.
yeah, oh
That's
yeah. Or
just
like when a
not
kid,
that's not that's not a good that's not even a proper thing to ask for.
right? Or like when we were in the airplane and we hit a certain height and the kid's ears pop and kid screams. I'm like, dude, fair. I get it. I totally get you. Like, I'm not gonna get like some person might get upset with that, but I'm like, but that baby just experienced something I find uncomfortable. So like, I get it.
No, I get
I
it. I'm
get
not
it.
saying they're always horrible. I'm just saying it's the nature is there.
Yeah, yeah, for
So,
sure.
but I mean, I guess to your point, like, I guess by that statement, you're admitting that, okay, it depends on their mood. So, like, my point is they will eventually do something childlike.
Yeah,
So
you can't be
by their
upset.
nature, they will eventually. I again, I'm pointing out imperfection does not mean evil. It just
No,
means imperfect.
right? I think maybe though that would be a certain doctrine. I haven't made fun of the evangelicals, but there's certain doctrinated um there's certain doctrinated people who would be like, no, imperfection is evil. You must constantly strive for perfection because you must be like Jesus, who is perfect. That's why I like the version of Jesus, as you pointed out, that is human and imperfect.
Well, no,
I,
that's very so that's even if maybe, but for again for the sacrifice to make sense, he would have to be perfectly sinless. It's kind of
also
a
fair
part.
enough.
Again, it depends religion versus history. Well, I do want to, because not gonna lie,
No, I gotta.
I just got the eye from my wife that says it's time for bed. So, and she's not wrong. She's not wrong,
It
because
is.
this is
It's
the
time for
problem
bed.
that you and I always have, is we can literally go for hours, but we got all the questions out of the way, so good.
Oh, we did.
So, like most of my debates, we have not solved anything, and we probably created more questions than we've answered. But
It's true. We did not
hopefully, at
bridge the
least it
gap
was
between
no we.
atheists and Christians. No, we didn't.
And spoiler alert, it's not going to happen. But hopefully this was informative, or at least hopefully it was mildly entertaining.
I feel it was informative. I feel it was both
I mean,
edutainment.
certainly for us. Although I do appreciate the comment section, so thanks for that. I don't know when we'll do another episode like this, but actually we've done some. If you're new to the channel, go check out our review of the movie God's Not Dead, where I actually rewrite it to make it a much better movie. And check out some of the other episodes because we got a lot of stuff. Keep in mind we are idiots.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Justin's not.
yeah.
And to be fair, Justin's not normally on this show. He's guest starred
No,
a
no,
couple
no,
of
no,
times,
no,
but
no. I'm just here filling in for the regular guy.
hey, there you go. But anyway, we'll wrap this one up. We will bid you all a good night, but please feel free to keep it going in the comments section. And